Thank you very much for joining me here on Live with Omar Moore on Substack on this Sunday. I hope this has been a pleasant Sunday so far for you. It's great to have you all here. Thank you very much indeed. I wanted to welcome you all, so thank you for that. I hope you're all well. Not ORWELL, but ALL. Second word, WELL. I hope you're all well on this Sunday, but you can be all well as well. It's great to have you here. Hello to you, Copaganda. It's a great pleasure to have everybody in the building today. I'm going to do a couple of news items very quickly. Then I'm going to get to the cornerstone of this particular live, which is an American history lesson. What is American? I didn't say what is an American. I said what is American. I'm going to get to that. And then I was going to do a giveaway today, but there's just so much going on. There will be there will be a giveaway, but not today. And I do want to do a couple of reminders really quickly. First of all, look, health is so important. Please be good to yourselves. I know that we've got a healthcare crisis or a healthcare nightmare in the United States, but I want you to really, really be good to yourself. And with the craziness of the for-profit healthcare system here, it's very important to take care of yourself in any way that you really can, because I went to the emergency room yesterday and I had this inkling, and nothing turned out to be wrong. Everything turned out to be fine. Um, but I went to the emergency room and checked out just to check, because I was like, wait a minute, this pain, where's this pain coming from? And I'm at an age now where, I really can't afford to be messing around with health. So I take it very, very seriously. And look, people are insured, some people are not insured. I understand that. I do hope that you can hear and see me. I'm being told that my internet connection is unstable. So I hope that it's not unstable for you, and I hope that you can see me. Please hit the heart. But I really want to just take this moment for you to take care of your health. And I know that some people have insurance and some people don't, and it's very perilous. But if you do have some kind of pain or some kind of thing that does not feel right, please go to urgent care. Please go to the emergency room. Please do not second guess. Health is so important. And it's important to say that here to start off with, because it is very, very easily ignored, explained away. Some people don't like to go to doctors. Obviously, the healthcare costs. Some people don't want to go to the emergency room. Listen, I really understand that. And so I can understand how some people might bristle at me saying this, but I just want to say this to start off because it's very important and it's not said enough. Please take care of your health, right? Get a good night's sleep to the extent that you can, right? Please do that. Drink lots of water. I'm not going to tell you what to eat, and what you eat's your business. For me, I just try to do the best I can, but please, please drink water. Please get a lot of sleep as much as you can. It's very important. I want to just underline that. And if you have any kind of pain or ache that's really strange, that's been persisting for a day or two, do not wait. I went to the emergency room yesterday because there was this pain in my chest, and I'm like, Where's that coming from? Where's that pain coming from? And if you have a pain in your chest, that's a heart situation, right? That's something that could be a heart situation. And as we get older, we get all these aches and pains. But hey, King Ray Vet, I'm all right. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Hey, Kathleen from Winchester, Virginia. Great to have you here. But I just want to say really quickly, I have this pain in my chest, and I'm like, what's this? So yesterday, bang, like a flash. I didn't think about it. Emergency room. Luckily, I was out of there in 2 hours. So the reason I'm saying this to you is because I know that some people have health care insurance, some people don't. And I know some people don't like to go to doctors and are afraid to for various reasons, men and women, people in general, afraid to go. Please don't be afraid. Please get a checkup. I am well. Thank you, King Ray Vet. I am 100% well. They ran all these tests on me. I'm fine, right? I'm completely fine, King Ray Vet. Thanks for asking. Um, you know, I was in and out of there. But the thing is, it's best to get checked. Better to go to a doctor or to an urgent care and find out that everything's okay, like it was in my case, than to not go to an urgent care, not go to a doctor, not go to a hospital or an emergency room, and then something horrible happens. And as Emmy Beck says, I don't have health insurance. And Emmy Beck is representative of many millions of Americans. And thanks to this big BS bill, it has endangered many millions of Americans. And that's going to take effect in 2027. So, again, this is why I say some people may bristle at me for saying this because, and I'm not saying that Emmy Beck necessarily is doing that, but what I am saying is that, yeah, it's easy for perhaps for me. I'm fortunate enough to have health insurance. And many people don't have that in this country. And we need to have Medicare for all. We need to have health care for all. It needs to be absolutely a system that you see in other countries where it's socialized, where you have national, health care, all of that. But I want to start with that on this Easter Sunday. Thank you very much, everybody. Yes, I am well. I do hope that you are well. Angie Decadence, hello to you. Happy Sunday to you, Angie, as well, and to everybody in the chat. So, the one or two news items I want to get to really quickly. Yeah, and Emmy Beck cites the costs. Yeah, this is very serious. And thank you, Emmy Beck. I'm fine. Yeah, absolutely. I've done this many times. If I get this bad feeling of this chest pain or some other, whatever it is, I go. And I know it's not easy for everybody because many people don't have health care in this country. And in states, various different states don't do the exchange programs. They've actually done all kinds of things. Then there's a separate issue of Obamacare as well, and how some of these Republican states aren't doing it. The repeal of it, partial repeals of it in the big BS bill that's going to really take effect in 2027. And the bottom line is that we're already seeing an increase in premiums anyway this year. So thank you, everybody. Keep hitting the hearts. It's a great pleasure to have you here. Please subscribe to me on my personal Substack, popcorn, REEL. Substack.com. Thank you very much for doing that in advance. Please be a paid subscriber. Please be a free subscriber. I appreciate you either way. Quick news item. You may have seen Donald Trump's disrespectful message to Iran and to Muslims, quite frankly. And as a Christian, I found it to be completely blasphemous and offensive, what Donald Trump said on his social media earlier today. I mean, this guy is absolutely a disaster. Now, we knew this forever. And let this be a lesson to the Americans who voted for him. Let this be a lesson. We always need to seem to work and learn the hard way. Emmy Beck asked, what did he say? Well, one of the things he said was um, in his social media message today, and I'm not going to read all of it, but he said, one of the words he said is, open the fucking strait, as in Strait of Hormuz. He literally said, open the fucking strait. And if not, you bastards. And he used the word bastards and he used the word fucking. Literally, and he said, if not, you bastards are going to be blown to kingdom come, basically. Yeah, he's absolutely bonkers, King Ray. He's absolutely bonkers. This is what happens when you give a demented jackass, whom the Supreme Court gave all this power to. This is what happens. It's not him by himself. This is not in a vacuum. This is a system that has allowed this to happen. This is at least 77 million voters and 90 million voters who stayed at home that has allowed this to happen. This is the United States Supreme Court that has allowed this to happen. A Supreme Court on July the 1st of 2024, whose decision, Trump versus United States, allowed this to happen. So this is not in a vacuum, and Kathleen B, 100% demented in every sense of the word. Emmy Beck, zero empathy. Yeah, that truth. So I was hesitating, should I post it? I decided not to. I might end up posting it later. But literally in that message, he says, open the fucking strait, or by Tuesday, we're going to blow up your power plants. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then at the end of the message, he says, blessed be to Allah. Oh, really? That's, and again, I'm Christian, right? So I mean, listen, this is Easter Sunday, right? This is Passover, right? And so for him to say, blessed to be to Allah, and talk about how he's going to blow up Iran and blow up the power plants and open the fucking straits, you bastards. And then at the end of that, he says, "Blessed be to Allah, Islam, the religion of Islam, which is the most, arguably the most peaceful religion and most loving religion on the planet." Again, and I'm not a fan of organized religion, and I'm Christian. I'm not this devout Christian or anything like that. I believe in a higher power, but I don't go to church. But I know enough about religion and history and things like that, right, to know that that's blasphemous what he did. That's blasphemous. I think we all can agree, right? I think any of us, whether we're religious or not, or whether we believe in a higher power or not, can know that that's disrespectful to the Muslim faith and to people who practice to Islam, to the Islamic faith. That's disrespectful. And this is a guy who claims he's I'm 2 Corinthians. I'm the 2 Corinthians guy. Just crazy. Unbelievable, but very believable because you know who this is. You knew who he was. The people who voted for him knew who he was, and they put him back in there again. And yeah, King Ray, he's an idiot. Come on. He'll say anything at any time to anybody. Yeah. And Taco, and then King Ray Vet, and to everyone else, he'll be Taco on Tuesday. Trump always chickens out. Not that I want him to bomb the power plants. Of course I don't. None of us do. Watch him chicken out Tuesday, though. I guarantee you. Right? But this is what happens when you vote a guy back in like this, when a system props him up, when everybody capitulates. This is what happens. The Supreme Court gives him this power. This is what happens. This is it. No guardrails. The black woman warned you. She warned all of us. No guardrails this time around. And that's why you've got what you've got. You've got Hegseth, you've got Bondi out now. Well, she'll be out. Bondi, by the way, is not going to be out for at least another month officially, according to the Wall Street Journal yesterday. She's leaving at the end of this month, scheduled to. So she's not out yet. And then she'll be shuttled off to some lobbyist job. Noam, gone, although she's going to be tutoring around in some nonsensical job, right? Made up job. But this is what happens, folks. And we learn the hard way in this country. And thank you for the messages. Kathleen B., thank you very much. Yeah, the Supreme Court, she's talking about it, as I've said. They do have the capability of doing a lot of different things, Kathleen B., you're correct. And, this is the thing, and people, you have to vote. VOTE. You have to vote, folks. That's my final message before I get to the meat of what I want to get to. You have to vote. You just have to vote. You have to have a plan to vote. Ask yourself. You have to do what Muhammad Ali is telling you to do here in the background, right? This is a campaign from the late 1960s, early 1970s, right? Where he would literally be, Muhammad Ali, putting out these messages like this. Vote. It's your fight, right? We have to all do this, and we have to make this a cultural thing. We have to somehow, I think, make voting a cultural thing too. The way that we make all kinds of other things cultural in this country, we need to make voting a cultural thing. We need to have a national holiday for Election Day. We really do. But that requires, of course, a change in the Constitution and all the rest of it. And so that would be a 2/3 vote in Congress and maybe 3/4 of the states, I think, ratifying this. Now, America, Americanism. Oh, let me do this one other thing. The next time I do a giveaway, it will be of this book. All right. This is a book by Jeff Bennett called Black Out Loud. It is about the history of black comedians in the United States and from the late 19th century into the 1990s, into the 20th century. So please, please, please become a paid subscriber because you get the benefit of being put in a hat to get this book from Jeff Bennett of PBS News, no less. And Jeff Bennett, this book just came out a week or two ago. I think it's going to be on the New York Times bestseller list if it isn't already. Please, please buy this book if you can. Read this book. I'm going to be giving away one copy next time I do a giveaway. I promise. Next time I do a giveaway, paid subscribers only, you have a chance to win this. So I wanted to just say that. There's also a book out here as well. I'm not going to give this next book away, but this is the book that's interestingly come out around the same time as Jeff Bennett's book. This is by a black woman, a sister named Raylan Barnes. It's called Darkology. Now, Darkology is about blackface and how blackface became the American entertainment. And in fact, both books tackle blackface. Jeff Bennett's book does to a degree. This book spends, all the time, its whole time talking about how blackface in this country came about, how it evolved, and all the rest of it. And also a great book on blackface is David Leventhal's book entitled Blackface. But if you like history and if you're interested in history, then this is the Substack to watch out for. And there are other people that you can watch out for. I want you to subscribe to Jacqueline Keeler, who I'm going to be doing a live with tomorrow at lunchtime here on the West Coast, but it will be 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow on the East Coast here on Substack Live. Join myself, join Jacqueline Keeler, and myself. We're going to have a conversation about the Supreme Court. We're going to have a conversation about birthright citizenship, and we're going to have a conversation about Native Americans and how all of these things tie together, these aspects tie together, given what the United States Supreme Court listened to last week with the oral arguments. We're going to talk about that. And Jacqueline Keeler is a historian. She's a Native American, and we're going to have a conversation here on Substack Live tomorrow, Monday, April the 6th, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 12 p.m. here on the West Coast. So I do want to do that as a programming note. I've already sent out an alert to every subscriber. So please, 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 if you're looking at your email box, please take a look at that. And tomorrow, be here at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, as I do a Monday Live with the historian Jacqueline Keeler. And please subscribe to her. She is on Substack. If you do read the email post that I put forth to all subscribers, or if you go on my timeline, you will see that post. And what you can do is subscribe to her as well. I've put her information in that post. Please subscribe to her and please subscribe to me. So that is what I wanted to say as a programming alert. Now, what I want to get to is history. If you like history, I'm going to distill some of that to you here over the next few minutes. Now, look, the country got its independence in 1776, as we know. Before that, of course, this was Native American land. It still is Native American land. This has been a Native Americans' country for so long because it's their land. And the two original sins of this country are the genociding of Native Americans and the stealing of their land. And the second original sin of this country is the enslavement of black people in this country. The enslavement, 244 years of enslavement of black people in this country. Those are the two original sins of this land. Now, 1776, this country got its independence from the British, right? We had the counter-revolution of that year, where you had black people fighting for freedom, right? Fighting to get to where we are, which is not a great place. But here's one book by Gerald Horne, Enslavement, Resistance, and the Origins of the United States of America. The Counter-Revolution of 1776, right? Important book. What was happening in 1787? The Constitutional Convention. And what was happening there? You had these white men who enslaved black people, who owned black people as property at the Constitutional Convention, whether it was Madison, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, all these people, right? And they were trying to devise a system of engagement. They were trying to devise a system of how we would be who we've become in this country. And what you have seen and what you know is that the Constitutional Convention, one of the things that happened, okay, is this. This is really, really important to focus on. We had the enumeration clause in the Constitution, right? And the enumeration clause of the Constitution could be found at that time under Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Enumerations Clause, when it came to deciding, how would representatives be brought along? How would you have a system of government? And what would that take in terms of representatives? People who would represent the people, those people who were designated as representatives, as in House of Representatives. And so the Enumerations Clause, which was determining a number of people in a state that would be represented, right? You would have white people, white men especially, indentured servants, Native American Indians, and then you'd have enslavement, black people, enslaved black people. And so the Enumerations Clause, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, at the time in 1787, said that black people were three-fifths of a human being in terms of representation for who would be represented three-fifths of a human being, right? That's what we would have, right? That's what we would have. Then you had Indians not taxed. All of those things were part of Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. And that was in 1787. What you then had was in the year 18, I'm going to jump around here because this is really important. What you had after 1787, it took nearly 100 years to repeal that particular clause that said three-fifths of a human being, that said that black people were three-fifths of a human being. Took almost 100 years to do that. So you had 1787 and the Enumerations Clause of the Constitution, right? Then you go to 1857. And what happened in 1857? Dred Scott versus Sanford. So this history of what is American and what is American history is laid out really in what I'm trying to say here. And in 1857, you had Dred Scott, who was an enslaved black man, who was married, who I think had children as well, bring this case to the Supreme Court against Sanford, who I think was his enslaver. And John Sanford had brutalized Dred Scott, had slapped the wife of Dred Scott, Eliza, I think her name was, and had brutalized the children. And what happened there was is that this went to the Supreme Court, and Dred Scott said, you know what? I want a cause of action here against this person, this enslaver, who beat me, threatened me, beat my wife and children. I deserve redress here, and I absolutely am entitled to that as someone who is here in America. And by the way, the Supreme Court, surprise, surprise, said black people have no rights that white men are bound to respect. Chief Justice Roger Taney, Taney, said at the time that black people have no rights that white men are bound to respect. So, in other words, Dred Scott, take your beating and go home. You are not a protected class in the United States of America. Chief Justice Roger Taney, it would not surprise you to know, was an enslaver himself, a white man who was a racist, who was an enslaver, and he was sitting as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of this country. And he said that in 1857. Dred Scott versus Sandford, 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 Dred Scott, Dred, second word Scott, Scott. Dred Scott versus Sanford was 1857. So the posture of this country continued to be, and still is, but continued to be at that time, black people, you have no rights. You're spending 244 years after we enslaved you, brought you here, enslaved you, and you are continuing to be enslaved by us. You've got no rights. And you've got no personhood. After all, in 1787, we as white men said that you are three-fifths of a person. So you have these Supreme Court cases that are pushing back against this, or at least black plaintiffs who are pushing back against this. And then you have a white Supreme Court that's slapping those black plaintiffs down. You have Native Americans as well who are fighting against this. And I'm going to talk about this with Jacqueline Keeler tomorrow, on our live tomorrow. You have people like Jim Ark, who in 1884 asserted that he was a US citizen. Okay? But in 1857, we had Dred Scott versus Sanford. And what happened soon after 1857? You guessed it, the Civil War, right? The Civil War, which was what, 4 years long, 1861 or thereabouts through 1865. And it wasn't a war about, oh, we want to free the enslaved black people. That's not what the war was. I mean, the war was fought on slavery. The war was fought on keeping enslavement. The war was fought on the Union. As far as Lincoln was concerned, enslavement could just keep going. He didn't give a damn about that. He didn't. You can read any book, including Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States. So you have the Civil War. You had, during the Civil War, black people fighting for their freedom as well, right? You had the 54th Massachusetts, an all-black regiment. You had all these things happen. You had the Emancipation Proclamation, which really didn't free slaves at all. It did not free enslaved black people. Do not believe that, because, listen, the Emancipation Proclamation really freed people in rebel states, but it did not free enslaved black people at all. It really didn't. And it's one of the biggest myths about the Emancipation Proclamation and Lincoln. Listen, we just have to face the facts about all of this. So you had that Civil War, you had Juneteenth, right, where there was still millions of black people down in Texas who didn't even know about their freedom for 2 years. You had that, right? 1865, Reconstruction came along. I'd say more around 1866 or so. And there's two different books I can point you to about this. W.E.B. Du Bois talks about Reconstruction, one of the legendary scholars and thinkers and authors, a black man named W.E.B. Du Bois, most famous for the book, The Souls of Black Folk. This book, he writes about the Black Reconstruction in America, and he starts at 1860 to 1880. That's his marker for Reconstruction, around 20 years. Okay? This is a must-read book. Black Reconstruction in America, 1860 to 1880, right? I am more inclined to go with, and it's a very important book, I am more inclined to go with Reconstruction being a bit narrower, around 12 years. So I'd go around I'd say 1865 to 1867. Eric Foner, a white historian and author, puts Reconstruction at 1863 to 1877. Reconstruction, the updated edition, this also is a very important book, a very good book. America's Unfinished Revolution. So he puts Reconstruction around 1863 to 1877. 1863 was the Emancipation Proclamation. 1877, I'm going to get to in a moment, right? Because 1877 is quite a year, right? I think these are big books. And so if you love to read, you will love to read these books, all right? So you have the Dred Scott case. You have 1787 with the three-fifths, it was called the Three-Fifths Compromise, the enumeration clause, 1787. Dred Scott decision, 1857, right? So that's a 70-year distance between the two. 1857, Dred Scott. 1860 or 1861, the Civil War begins. You've got the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. You've got the end of the Civil War roughly in 1865 or thereabouts. Then you have Reconstruction, right? Then you have, in Reconstruction, black people, black men in particular, being able to own and operate things being able to do a number of things. It wasn't easy because you still had the enslavement codes in 1866, the black codes. I call them the enslavement codes, right? In 1866, Andrew Jackson, excuse me, Andrew Johnson, the black codes, which really was re-enslavement because they needed black people who were newly freed had to jump through all these hoops, and they were essentially working for zero money. And quite often they'd be working for the very people, the very white men whom they'd just been released from as enslaved black persons. So really, it was an effect. The black codes were an essentially effect. It was essentially a continuation of enslavement because you might have been so-called free, but you weren't but you were working for nothing, which is the same as being enslaved because we didn't get a dime. Our ancestors got nothing for our labor. So the black codes around 1866, 1865, 1866 by Johnson, Andrew Johnson was the vice president to President Lincoln. After Lincoln got assassinated, Andrew Johnson came in. Andrew Johnson, by the way, also got impeached. He was a horrible president. And it would not surprise you to know he was a racist. And it would not surprise you to know that the black codes under him really were a continuation of enslavement of black people in the United States. All these contracts that black people were supposed to enter into, and then they had to pay fines that they could not afford because heck, you've just basically told us that we're free, right? But if we do something wrong under these black codes, we have to pay this fine. With what money? We weren't paid during enslavement. We weren't paid. So, how are we going to get out of this fine and pay it when we don't have any money and we're supposedly free? So, what I'm saying here is that the black codes were a continuation of enslavement. It was like what Dr. King said in his book, Why We Can't Wait, where he said we had freedom to hunger, we had freedom to, be homeless. But what else did we have? We didn't have an economic base. We didn't have any of these things. Now, there were laws under Reconstruction and the three key amendments there that gave black people that we fought and died for. We gave that allowed us to have these rights and things that white men had to a degree were the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Why? 13th, 14th, 15th, well, they were the Reconstruction Amendments. The 13th Amendment enacted in 1865, the 14th Amendment that was ratified in 1868, and the 15th Amendment that was enacted and ratified in 1870. Right? 1865, the 13th Amendment, an end to servitude, except for if you are incarcerated, right? That's what the 13th Amendment was. The 14th Amendment, well, the 14th Amendment, equal protection, and it also gave you citizenship, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow with Jacqueline Keeler, right? And also the 14th Amendment of equal protection and citizenship was something else, a repealing of the 1787 enumeration clause that I talked about earlier. Remember, I talked about the enumeration clause of 1787 in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, that said that black people were three-fifths of a human being, three-fifths of a person. The 14th Amendment, Section 1, I think it was Section 1. Let me have a quick look at my Constitution here. The 14th Amendment, Section 2, right? The 14th Amendment, Section 2, which is here. The 14th Amendment, Section 2, repealed the 1787 enumerations clause by removing the language about black people being three-fifths of a person. The new Section 2 was representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. That's the new sentence. The language that is missing from section 2 that was originally in the 1787 enumerations clause after the word excluding Indians not taxed and three-fifths of all other persons was the language that was in the 1787 enumerations clause. That language about and three-fifths of all other persons, that language was now out of the Constitution thanks to this section, Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment, as I said, was ratified in 1868. So you have to look at the way that the America and the American society was going, right? There was this push and pull. The end of enslavement, so to speak, but met with the black codes. Every black progress, every bit of black progress was met with white lash. I don't call it backlash. I call it white lash. So every time we as black people move forward, we have the white lash, the pushback, the violent pushback. So those black codes in 1866 represented a violent pushback. Black people were still essentially enslaved. Then you had, like I said, these three amendments that were key. And these amendments got pushed back as well. They got pushback. 1865, the 13th Amendment, 1868, the 14th Amendment, and 1870, the 15th Amendment. And what did the 15th Amendment say in 1870? Well, that said that the right to vote in this country would not be abridged by race or previous condition of servitude. That was 1870. So this was a pushback against the black codes, right? This amendment in 1870, the 15th Amendment, gave black men the right to vote. Now, mind you, black women did not have the right to vote yet. They would not get that right until nearly 100 years later. So when you look at these amendments were put in, but there was pushback on these amendments. And there were movements, the abolitionist movement, all these things came about, and people fought for their freedom. There was all kinds of things going on. There was push and pull all the time. And so the 15th Amendment represented the aspect of giving black men the franchise. And you had Reconstruction, these Reconstruction amendments really were a factor in giving black people a number of things, but we fought for these things. They didn't just get handed to us. We fought for these things, and many of our ancestors died for these things. And then we had, thanks to apportionment, thanks to us being able to vote, black men specifically, though, you had black people building economy, building rights, building and owning their own stores, and owning land, and owning a number of different things. Had our own businesses, our own banks, schools, churches, everything, banks, you name it, post offices. But what happened? The pushback, white violence, the white lash, white violence. And then you had, after all of these amendments, you had in 1870, the 15th Amendment. Well, there were white people all over the South and beyond who were killing black people, lynching black people. How dare you vote? How dare you? 15th Amendment comes out in 1870, and then you've got white people pushing back. How dare you? We don't want you to vote. So we're going to lynch you. We're going to kill you. We're going to murder you. And so you had all of that violence by white people in response to all these amendments, and also the 15th Amendment in 1870. And what happened? You had the 1871 Klan Act, the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which was intended to punish white people and Klan actors for their violence against black people. That act was tenuously enforced. Tenuously enforced. Then you had the 1876 presidential election. What was significant about that election in 1876? Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel J. Tilden. Rutherford B. Hayes was a Republican. Samuel Tilden was a Democrat. What happened in 1876? An election for president between those two that was so close, so hotly disputed. Florida was disputed. It was really close. Louisiana was disputed. It was really close. And one or two other states, very close. Rutherford B. Hayes was the winner, but it was so close. And there was a bitter fight between Hayes and the Republicans, and a bitter fight, right, between with the Democrats and Samuel Tilden. And so this fight went on for a number of weeks and months until we got into the following year of 1877. And there was something called, and sometimes it's called the 1876 Compromise, but it's often called the 1877 Compromise because it happened really in 1877, right? But this is a real issue because in 1877 there was the compromise because these two men could not come to a conclusion about the election. It was so hotly contested. And so, what was the agreement, the compromise, or what is called the blood compromise? And the reason why it's called the blood compromise will be explained very clearly in a moment. Rutherford B. Hayes was fighting here with Samuel J. Tilden, and Rutherford B. Hayes, in this agreement, was going to become the president. But Samuel J. Tilden said, yeah, you can have the presidency as long as you remove the federal troops from the southern states that were protecting black people during Reconstruction. Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican, said, oh, that's fine. I've got no problem with that, Sam. I'm going to do exactly what you like. I'll be president, and I will execute your wish to remove federal troops from the South. Those federal troops were protecting were guarding these southern areas, these states. And black people, even though there was still violence, were afforded a measure of protection. But what did Rutherford B. Hayes agree to? He agreed to the removal of those federal troops in those southern states. And when that happened, Reconstruction was over, which is why 1877 is a key date, because that was the date that the compromise happened. And once those federal troops were removed from the South, it was open season for white people to commit violence against black people. And so you had massacres, you had black towns being burnt down, right? You had Black Wall Street in the 1920s. You had all these things happen as an outgrowth of what Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden agreed to in the blood oath, the blood compromise, which is what it's known for. And it's called the blood compromise very simply because that meant that black people were going to be murdered, lynched, killed, you name it, by white people who now had carte blanche to do this because there were two white men who were greedy, selfish, racist, couldn't give a damn about what happened to black folk. You have to understand that black people have been perennially under attack in this country. This is not something that is just some incidental subject. Incidental subject. It's not an incidental subject at all. This is very serious. So these two books are very important in your understanding of Reconstruction and how these black people out here, how we as black people have never caught any breaks. I think as King Ray Vet said, excuse me, and Eric Foner with Reconstruction, right? These are very important books. We get to the Great Migration as a result of all this hell that black people are catching. And remember, black people made up a very high proportion of the Southern population, right? Which is clear to understand, right? Because you know that you had so much enslavement going on in the South and in other parts of the country as well, And in Virginia, you had black people who were enslaved make up more than 60% of the population of Virginia. And across the southern states, you had more enslaved black people than you did white people as a population. So you had all of this violence going on as black people were building businesses, they were getting burnt down in the 1900s, right? You had all this happening, Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma, New Orleans, all these massacres that Ida B. Wells, who you need to really study up on research on, Ida B. Wells Barnett, had written about for a long, long time in the 1900s and the late 1800s. And so this continued on. You had a Jim Crow era. That's really what this end of Reconstruction gave birth to Jim Crow. So we had another nearly one. So after Reconstruction ended in 1877, we had, after that, the Jim Crow era from 1877 all the way up to 1965. And some would say Jim Crow still continues today, and it does in more subtle but also very obvious forms. But during this Jim Crow era where all this violence was happening against black people, even more white violence against black people, you had all of this going on. Black men tenuously had the vote, were killed for voting in this country. Black women didn't even have the right to vote yet. You had the 1920s and the suffrage movement, which in 1920, the fight for women, white women, to vote, right? Because that's essentially what it became. Sojourner Truth was part of that movement as a black woman. She wrote the famous poem or story, Ain't I a Woman Too? Because she fought hard for women to vote. And as a black woman, she was left behind by many of the white women who fought for this in the suffrage movement. And so black women weren't there given those same voting rights that white women were given in 1920. Black women had to fight for those rights for another 45 years during the Jim Crow era, so that when the Voting Rights Act of 1965 came along, black women were able to vote. Thanks to black women fighting for that right, thanks to Dr. King and Ella Baker and so many other people who, Amelia Boynton, Diane Nash, black women who fought for this right. And Dr. King, by the way, yesterday was the 58-year mark of his assassination. April 4th, 1968. That was yesterday. So you had this long history of struggle and liberation. And as Mary points out, Fannie Lou Hamer came along as well during that time. Can't forget her. Thank you, Mary. Absolutely. Fannie Lou Hamer, as I said, Ella Baker, great organizer. These are black women out here who did this work. There were so many black women who strategized, who fought, who did all these things. And I didn't even mention Harriet Tubman, abolitionist, strategist, war strategist, by the way. Someone who freed many enslaved black people. Between 80 and 100 enslaved black people were freed by this one black woman who risked her life, risked everything. She didn't have any watch. She didn't have any compass. She went by the moon and the stars. And we've got to this point now, right? There's a book. I talked about the Black Codes of 1866. Well, there's a book that talks about the re-enslavement of black people. I talked about how the Black Codes of 1866 with Andrew Johnson were essentially a further enslavement of black people. Here's a book written about this and more It's called Slavery by Another Name: The Reenslavement of Black Americans of the Civil War. I'm sorry, from the Civil War to World War II. This is a very important book by Douglas Blackman. It's a white historian. This book is another important book that chronicles the re-enslavement of Black people from the end of Reconstruction, which I've just talked about, through World War II. This is all the Jim Crow era. This book really lays out in detail about all of this that has happened in that period of time. Very important book as well by Douglas Blackman. And it won the Pulitzer Prize. Slavery by Another Name. Because that's really what it was. If you trace back the Black Codes in 1866 and all of this push and pull, but through all of it, Black people's tenure in this country was always uncertain, was always on shaky ground. And yet we were able to produce such greatness, even with all of these brutalizations against us. We were able to produce such important inventions, do all these things, right? Lead movements. You had Frederick Douglass as an abolitionist. You had Harriet Tubman as an abolitionist. You had a number of other people as abolitionists who really did fight. Lincoln gave, you had Douglass, Frederick Douglass, counseling Lincoln. You know, that was not in Steven Spielberg's Lincoln movie back in 2012 or whenever that movie came out. You didn't see anything about Frederick Douglass in that movie. You saw Daniel Day-Lewis acting his ass off, but you didn't see anything about Black folk and what we contributed. You only had two Black people in that movie, basically three. Two of them at the very beginning of the movie and one of them at the very end, right? And it was all about the white men who really cared about enslavement. They didn't give a damn about enslavement. I can only think of one white man who did give a damn about ending enslavement. That was John Brown. Okay, John Brown. But this book, Slavery by Another Name, charts out the whole period of from the end of Reconstruction into the Civil War, into the World War II era, about how enslavement persisted, really persisted through laws across this land. You had the Great Migration amidst all this violence post Reconstruction. From after 1877, you had the Great Migration. Black people moved away from the South because of all this white violence against us. We moved, and it really took hold in the early 1900s, around 1920 or so, where you had the Great Migration. Black people moving from the South, moving to the West, mostly to the West, but also to the Northeast. This book, great book, The Warmth of Other Suns, Isabel Wilkerson, right? She chronicles all of this in another book, which you must read. The Warmth of Other Suns, Isabel Wilkerson. Isabel Wilkerson is a Pulitzer Prize winning author, Black woman, who also wrote the book Caste: The Origins of Our Discontent. This is her first book. Caste is her second book, right? Very important books. And so Isabel Wilkerson chronicles uh, Black migration, right? And how we moved to places like San Francisco in the 1920s and 30s, right here in this town. And Black spending power was really strong after, what we built through Reconstruction. We built a whole hell of a lot. And I'm telling you that Black spending power in this country was really strong. And there were so many white companies marketing to Black people. And in our spending power was basically an all-time high. So you really have to understand, folks, that this is the kind of thing that was going on. And whether it was the re-enslavement essentially through Jim Crow of Black people, we were getting poll taxes. We couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. There was the segregation that was happening, obviously, segregation, and this book chronicles that. It was government policy to segregate Black people. The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. Very, very important book, right? This book here talks about how this is official government policy to put black people in certain parts of certain country, in certain places in this country, certain parts of the country, district by district, redrawing maps, all kinds of things. And that's what this is. This is official US government policy. You had the US Agriculture Department and the way it treated black farmers. Absolute racism. The agriculture, the USDA, Department of Agriculture, right, is one of the most racist aspects of government in this country. This book is really important. Talks about segregation, and one of the first chapters is about San Francisco. And when black people arrived in San Francisco, essentially in the 1920s and 30s, by the time that the late 1940s ended, you had this push of black people out of San Francisco, which really started in the 1950s where that push happened. And this is not just true of San Francisco, this is true of a lot of other places. San Francisco is as racist as it comes. I live here. Some people would say, and I would agree with them, that San Francisco is more racist than places in the Deep South. I would actually agree with that. Absolutely would agree with that. Right here, right now in 2026. And you have black people being pushed out of San Francisco in the 1940s and 50s. You have this mass push, right? Because you had what was called the Harlem of the West here in San Francisco. The Fillmore district of San Francisco was literally called the Harlem of the West because of all the black innovation, black music, black culture, black ownership of businesses, black businesses. And then that got pushed out. There were laws that pushed that out of San Francisco, as it did in all other parts of this country, as it did in other parts of California. Look at what happened in Palm Springs in Southern California, right? Where black people and brown people owned homes. They were being firebombed by government policy down in the Los Angeles area, and in Palm Springs. There's still lawsuits being brought about that. J.E. McAuliffe, The Color of the Law, is all about the actual laws. It's about the laws and their effects on black people, J.E. It really is. It's about the law and about the effects of the law on black people and how the government policy in the law reshaped and segregated this country. And all black people wanted, for everybody listening, all we wanted is our freedom and our equality. We weren't looking at integration. That's what the white trope was. That's what the white uh, posture was. Oh, you want to be next to us. It's not that black people wanted to be next to white people. It's that we wanted our freedom. We wanted to go about our business. We wanted to be able to do our jobs, have equal access. That's what it was. Because we know that when we are given the tools, we will just knock this out the park. We've done it many times. All we wanted was access to the tools. We didn't want access to be around white people. That's not what it was for us. But part of the white racist fear factor was to pump the average white person who would also have their own racist proclivities, to pump them with this fear, right? That black people were coming for your daughters. They were coming to control everything. Ooh, it's part of the great replacement theory, right? That, ooh, we were coming to, no, we weren't coming for white women, And part of the propaganda of that nonsense and that racism was from the 1915 film Birth of a Nation, which really was produced in response to the migration of black folk after Reconstruction, right? 1915, excuse me, Birth of a Nation, which was shown in the White House by that racist ass Woodrow Wilson. We never caught a break in this country. And some people are acting as if, oh, well, you know what? Hey, 1965 solved all your black problems. Oh, no. Black folk our problems were not solved by 1965. They weren't, right? So 1965, which is where we're up to now, black women got the right to vote, right, through 1965 through the Voting Rights Act. And what happened after that? You had the continuation of poll taxes in the Deep South. Even before that, you had poll taxes. How many jelly beans are there in a jar? How many bubbles are there in a bar of soap? That is the question that black people were being routinely asked in the South in the 1950s and 60s. Black women were asked that question as well in 65, even after the Voting Rights Act. There was still all this violence against black people. You had black people being registered to vote and being killed for it. You had white people trying, like Viola Louisa, to register black people to vote. She was murdered by the Klan for doing so. You had the three civil rights workers in 1964 in Mississippi, June the 21st, 1964. We're coming up on another mark of that in the next few months. June 21st, 1964, the Klan and some white police officers as well, in the Klan, murdering Goodman, a white Jewish man in New York, Andrew Goodman, and also Mickey Schwerner, another white Jewish man who was trying to register black people to vote in the Deep South, and Cheney, a black man. That would be John Cheney, I think his name was. I think it was Andrew Goodman, Mickey Schreiner, and I think John Cheney. I'm not quite sure what his first name was. I can't believe I'm blanking on his first name. But Cheney was the black Southern man in that group, that trio of civil rights workers who were trying to register black people to vote in the South. In '64, they were all murdered, all three of them. And this is the thing I'm saying. This is the continuation of this. This is all continuation from what we saw from the end of Reconstruction onwards through the Jim Crow era. And it still didn't end because then you had the Supreme Court giving these funky ass decisions, right, over the next few years after the 1960s. Whether you had things such as the insidious decision about the ending of sections of the Voting Rights Act, like Shelby versus Holder in the year 2013. Chief Justice John Roberts gave the majority opinion that essentially said, well, you know what? There's no discrimination for black people in voting because black people were able to vote for a black president. Not once, but twice. And because they were able to do that, essentially, hey, there's no barrier to voting. You've just voted for one of your own. I mean, it was such a racist decision. Chief Justice John Roberts, the same Chief Justice John Roberts, who for 45 years has wanted to get rid of voting rights in this country. Chief Justice John Roberts, who in that opinion, said that, hey, look, there's no barrier to voting. And that decision, Shelby versus Holder, Holder being Eric Holder, then the Attorney General under Barack Obama in 2013, that decision eviscerated the Pre-Clearance Act of the Voting Rights Act. The Pre-Clearance Act said that before a state can change its voting laws, it has to run them through the Justice Department first. And the Justice Department would have a period of time to look through the proposed changes to a state's voting laws, and they would okay them, or they would say, no, you can't do this. You have to go back to the drawing board. That pre-clearance provision was gone in 2013, and no sooner did that decision come out than you had lots of southern states changing their voting laws, making voting harder for black people, making voter harder, quite frankly, for a whole lot of people, including poor white people and elderly people. And people have to understand that black gains in this country benefit everybody in the country. Black people, white people, brown people, Latinos, everybody. Very important to understand this. So all of these books that I've talked about today, and one that I've not yet talked about that I'm going to briefly show you, this book, because this book, When Affirmative Action Was White by Ira Katz Nelson, a white historian, goes into all the benefits that white people were getting in this country during the Jim Crow era. And I am going to, Emmy Beck says, hey, Omar, send a list of these books via email. I am going to put this in a post conversation bit to all subscribers, to everybody. So you will see that I am going to enumerate all of these books, right, in a post live summary of these books, right? So don't worry. For those of you who are watching this now, I'm going to write all these books down and post them. Very important, because these books are important, folks. If you want to know about what is America, or what is American, enslavement is American. It's very American. Genocide is American. It's very American. The two original sins, right? I told you about them. The genociding of Native Americans and the stealing of their land, and the enslavement of black people for 244 years plus. Those are the two original sins. That is what is American. You hear people say, as American as apple pie. Uh-uh. No. As American as enslavement, as American as genocide. Hitler got his cues from here. Please watch The US and the Holocaust by Ken Burns, PBS documentary. Very, very important, folks. This book talks about a number of things, including, by the way, the GI Bill. So at the same time that you had, with this book here, talking about the re-enslavement of black people from post-Reconstruction, from Civil War to World War II, during that time, this is a great companion book, right? Because during this time, you had the GI Bill, which was absolutely benefiting white men who fought in World War II. Black men who fought in World War II, they didn't get diddly. They didn't get any GI Bill. You had enslavers, remember, who were paid after slavery ended after enslavement of black people ended in this country. You had white men who were enslavers being compensated for all of the black people that they had enslaved. This went on in at least 8 states, including also the District of Columbia. South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, these are among the states that this happened in, right? These are amongst the states where enslavers, white men who owned black people as a property and enslaved black people, were being compensated. I think it was in the order of $500 or $600 per enslaved black person. They were being compensated for that, or maybe even more money than that per enslaved black person. So all this stuff was going on, and then this book, Affirmative Action, when Affirmative Action was white, by Ira Katz Nelson, goes into all kinds of things. And you got to also remember that the GI Bill was for white men. There was no legislation protecting black men, giving them any recompense. We had no reparations. We had no form of compensation whatsoever. We still haven't. White Jewish people get compensation from Germany. Japanese Americans, Americans of Japanese background get compensation and got an apology for the internment in this country by a Democratic president, FDR. This is not about Democrat and Republican. This is about what's right and what's wrong, and what's black and what's white. That's what it's about. That's why there's lots of people who need to understand the history of this country. I've given you essentially just over an hour, because I'm going to keep this much shorter, because really I'm coming to the end of that now with these books that I've put out here, right? These are really important books. I'm going to, again, do a write-up of all these books. I want you to rewatch this, okay? I also want you to consider another book, because at the time that all this stuff was going on, what was happening in this country? Education systems were decimated, right? You had black folk in this country who were, again, it was a crime to allow a black person to read or write. It was a crime in this country for black people to educate themselves, especially during enslavement. If a black person was caught reading a book, we could be killed. We would be killed. So you have all of these things going on. And this book, Anti-Intellectualism in American Life by Richard Hofstadter, talks about this. Talks about many things, really. It doesn't talk so much about the black people being killed for trying to read and write, but it talks about how the role of stupidity and ignorance has been very much engineered in the United States. And it starts with the 1950s. It starts with the 1950s. It starts with the presidential election in the 1950s. Eisenhower, who was not the brightest bulb in the pack, right? And how he won that election over the intellectual. Oh, crikey, I'm trying to think of the name of this guy now. I'll have to go look at the book again. Adlai Stevenson, I think it was. Adlai Stevenson, who was looked at as the intellectual of the bunch. But he lost to Eisenhower, if memory serves me correctly, in the 1952 election. And so this anti-intellectualism, along with the McCarthy era, that also was a huge factor in trying to dumb down this country. And of course, the election systems and the education systems in this country, which dumbed down what? The South. One of the most undereducated part of the country is in the deep South, in the South. In the top 10, the bottom 10, excuse me, look at all of the statistics for education for the deep South, for the southern states, and you will find the vast majority of the bottom 10 are southern states in education, near last, rock bottom in education. That's for a very deliberate reason. So this book, Pulitzer Prize winning author, this book I think got the Pulitzer Prize. Very important as well, right? So people have to understand this didn't just happen in 2026 or 2025. This is a system. It took differing forms, but it's brutal and violent all the way through. The ignorance. That last book is very important because you've got the ignorance factor and now how the ignorance gets marketed through our system, right? Through, not our system, through this system that benefits billionaires. And billionaires pay people to have this ignorance flying around. You see it in government. You saw it in Ronald Reagan's tenure. You saw it in Nixon's tenure. You saw it in Eisenhower's tenure. You saw it in George W. Bush's tenure. You saw it with the celebrification of politics. You saw it with all these famous people running for things. Reagan was as a governor of this state in the 60s. He decimated education in California, and it still has not recovered. Here in San Francisco too, and there's San Franciscans, particularly white San Franciscans, many of them. I'll say in particular parts of San Francisco, there are these white San Franciscans who think that they're better than everybody else and they're dumb as ass. And they think they're very sophisticated, but they're not. They don't know shit from Shinola about history, about any history, global history, American history. They don't know anything. And this history that I presented over the last hour is about American history. People say, well, it's black history. Yeah, it's happened to us, but it's happened to this whole country. This is American history that I've spent the last hour or so talking about. It's very, very important that we understand this. I've given you essentially a skeletal outline of the history. I've not gone into especially deep detail on a lot of things. I think I have to a degree, but all of these things are very important. And I talked about this book earlier, and Emmy Beck has just mentioned as well. He or she mentions Howard Zinn. Zinn is the last name of Howard Zinn, of his name, right? He wrote a book called The People's History of the United States. I'll include that also in fact, it's on this shelf behind me. I just don't want to turn around and get it at the minute. But that book's important. Another book that's important. This one here, I'll write that down as well. This book here is by Lerone Bennett, right? This one is a really important book that you can see behind me here. Before the Mayflower, A History of Black America. I'll write that one down too. This one, Gloria Brown. Gloria, I think her name, I want to look around, see if I can pull it out here. There we go. Here we go. A Protest History of the United States, Gloria Brown Marshall. Okay? All the pushback against protest in this country, this is American. Protesting, fighting back, right? Listen, I want you to know something. Black folk weren't just sitting here. I mean, we were fighting back against all this violence. You have to remember, we had enslavement revolts in this country. We had Nat Turner in the 1820s in Southampton County, Virginia, a preacher who took part in listen to me, who took part in an enslavement revolt. He led an enslavement revolt that lasted, I think, about a week. It took the lives of at least 60 black, excuse me, it's at least 60, maybe 60 white people. And there were lots of black people that got killed as well. But this enslavement revolt took the lives of white people. This is Nat Turner, a black man, a black preacher. You need to understand who he was. You need to understand these figures: Ella Baker, Ida B. Wells, Harriet Tubman. You need to know who these people are, right? You need to know who Madam C.J. Walker was. These are black women. Some of these I just mentioned, black women who absolutely were the vanguard and are the vanguard of this country. There are other books I can tell you about here, right? But that'll be for another time. There was a long history of black people resisting and fighting back. And when guns were stripped away from us and our right to own guns, the right, gun ownership is another thing in this country that's always been dictated by racism. Who gets to own a gun, who doesn't? Who gets to open carry and who doesn't? It's about defending ourselves. And you got to think about all this. The Klan and the NRA were formed not too long from each other in terms of distance. So I can go into all of this, but I've just given you a skeletal outline. I could even go back to a book like this, Black Women in Antiquity, and how black women led the way on the African continent, where queens fought in battles, led revolutions and armies. We have to know this history. And this is the kind of history that ain't getting taught in the United States, ain't getting taught in books. There's great historians out here who will teach it, like Dr. Greg Carr, Carr. Greg is his first name. Professor Greg Carr, excuse me, the professor and chairman, I think, of the Africana Studies Department at Howard University. You need to check him out. That brother is a bad brother. If you think I've got lots of books, I pale in comparison, book-wise, to Dr. Greg Carr, the professor of Africana Studies at Howard University. You can go look him up. Last name Carr. That brother probably has millions. He has hundreds of thousands of books. And he can be seen every Thursday on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. I want you to subscribe to Roland Martin on YouTube. Roland S. Martin. YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. Please subscribe to that brother. Please watch his program every Monday through Friday from 6 p.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Right? He also is on the Black Star Network. You want to watch Greg Carr on Thursdays. That brother, and King Ray Vet just mentioned him. Dr. Greg Carr, as I've just mentioned as well. That brother is a bad brother. If you want to know about the history of this country, you need to be paying attention to that brother. Dr. Greg Carr is also on social media. I think he's on X still. Africana Carr, AF as in Frank, RICANA CARR. Now, Roland Martin Unfiltered is on YouTube Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern. If you want to know about what's going on in this country, what's going on in black communities, what black people are doing, and if you want to see black experts, black economists, black scientists, black politicians, if you want to really know what's going on in this place, you need to be tuning into Roland Martin. Roland Martin Unfiltered on YouTube. Please subscribe to Roland S. as in Sam Martin on YouTube. Okay? His show is on YouTube Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern. Monday through Friday. The Black Star Network. You can download that app. You can donate to Roland. I want you to also look at Black Voters Matter Fund. Black Voters Matter, a black organization that does a lot of excellent work in communities around the country. Voter education and voter empowerment. You need to go to Black Voters Matter Fund I will do a post live wrap up with all of this information. I want you to definitely send this out to people who are on your Substack, who subscribe to you, who follow you. I'm going to have that running as soon as I finish this in a couple of minutes. Please, 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 folks. It's so important. The Black Star Network is a great place. Shop Black owned businesses, shopblackstarnetwork.com. Very important place to go. Please buy Black. People who are saying they're boycotting Target, keep doing that. People who are not using Amazon, keep not using Amazon. Keep moving away from Amazon. Keep moving away from all these other corporations that do not serve you, your interests, or people in general. All right? Please, please buy Black. Shop blackstarnetwork.com. Okay. And also, there's lots of other great Black businesses out here, Black owned businesses, obws.com. That's officialblackwallstreet.com. Black owned businesses. There are other great individual Black owned businesses. Black Girl Sunscreen. Summertime is almost here. Well, it will be, right? It basically feels like summer now in some parts of the country. If you want to buy sunscreen from a Black female owned business, go to Black Girl Sunscreen. Type them up, you'll get their web address. Please patronize them. If you care about Black hair care and hair care products for Black people, you want to go and patronize a Black owned business called Melanin Hair Care, owned by a Black woman. MelaninHairCare.com. There's lots of others. Actively Black apparel, Black owned. ActivelyBlack.com. I will definitely put all of these things, plus all the books I've recommended in this discussion today, on a post coming up in a few minutes' time. I'll get that together. It's been a great pleasure. Please subscribe to me here on Substack. If you like what you have seen here today, what you have heard here today, please subscribe, become a paid subscriber or a free subscriber. Either is very much welcomed. If you are a paid subscriber, you do get a number of benefits, including giveaways of books. And I didn't give a book away today, but let me tell you, this is the next giveaway. Whenever I do it next, I don't know if it's going to be next. I don't want to make promises as to when. I said I was going to do it this weekend, and I didn't. But this book is next. Jeff Bennett's book. I want you to please subscribe to yours truly. I want you to subscribe to Michael Harriot. I want you to subscribe to Joy Reid, and Emmy Beck says that they got to know about me through my comments that I make on Joy Reid's show. Yeah, listen, there's a lot of people out here who you need to be following and subscribing to. Khalil Green, Kahlil, Green with an E on the end of his name. Michael Harriot with one T on the end of his name, Harriot. You need to be subscribing to him. You need to be subscribing to Terrell Starr, who is live from Ukraine. A Black man living in Ukraine. Has been living there for several years. You need to be subscribing to him on Substack. You need to be subscribing to Dr. Mary Marshall. I think Dr. Mary Marshall might even be in the chat today. So, Sister Doctor, it's a pleasure to see you. Dr. Mary Marshall. You need to be subscribing to her. Blackstack. You need to be subscribing to Blackstack. You need to be subscribing to these Black voices here. And we need to be doing that. It's not only about subscribing to me. I mean, I want your subscription and I would love that. I want you to also subscribe to these other people I've mentioned. Jacqueline Keeler, Native American historian, who I've talked about earlier. She and I are going to do a live tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Please come aboard. We're going to be talking about Native Americans. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court and birthright citizenship. Angie, I would love to have Joy Reid here on my live. I don't know whether she'd be able to come along if she has the time to. I don't know if she'd be willing to. I would love to talk to Joy Ann Reid. Absolutely. I have one of her books here. It's called Medgar and Merle, talking about the Evers family. I have her book here. I would like to talk to her. Of course, I'd love to talk to her. I would love to. It's about promoting Black voices, and we have to be doing that. Black people, we have to do that. White people watching this, you have to do that. And if you like what you've seen here, as I said today, please subscribe to yours truly, popcorn, reel.substack.com. You can subscribe to me. I would really appreciate that, whether paid or unpaid. Listen, I appreciate you all the same. And I really like that there's a lot of commenting going on in the chat. That's great. Thank you for that, and thank you, Mary. Grateful that your health scare turned out okay yesterday. Yeah, thank you, Mary. Yeah, when you get chest pains and you're older like I am, Lord, 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 you do not screw about with that. I'm somebody. If there, listen, I'm a bit of a hypochondriac actually, but anything like that, boom, I don't mess about with that. And this is what I said at the beginning of this conversation. And I know that many people don't have health insurance, and it's difficult for a lot of people. I understand that. So listen, I am very empathetic to that, and that's why this country system, we have to force changes here. We really do. We have to demand more of our elected officials, and we have to run ourselves for positions of power, locally or higher up. Run for dog catcher, run for something, right? I know people keep saying, and thank you again, Mary, for that. All is well here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please get checked. Please get a checkup, everybody. Please. I'm not joking about this, and I know some people don't have health insurance. Please, please, please get a checkup. Be good to yourselves. It's not easy. I know that it's not. It's not. Please drink plenty of water. Please do good things for your mental health, right? And please, please, please get a good night's sleep as best you can in this crazy ass time we're living in. And please vote. Please have a plan to vote. Very important. Very, very important. But look, I could go on forever here. I'm not going to, but please get checked, right? It's very, very important. Do those self exams, right? Whether it's a breast exam, self exam for lump, listen, people might find that uncomfortable, or people may find me talking about this uncomfortable, but this is about you and your health and your families who want you to be around, right? For a long, long time to come. Do that self-examination for breast exams. Do that self-examination, right? For testicular things. People are uncomfortable talking, but this stuff's really important. It really is. Prostate health, breast health, all these things. So look, I want to end. That's where I want to end, where I began, right, with the health stuff. Thank you, Gilda Johnson. You are great, Gilda says. Gilda, thank you. We will not be silenced, M.E. Beck says. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All of you, thank you. Education is a lamp. Thank you. Putting in those markers in about people to subscribe to. I'm going to put, again, all of these books that I've talked about or shown you today, I'm going to put them in the post that I'm going to get working on in a few minutes' time. And hopefully I'll have that ready for you in the next hour. All of these books, right? A quick flyby of all of these books. Oops. Of all of these books, right? All of these books, right? All of them. These books, all of these books. And of course, this book, which this is an old copy, but you need to have this book with you too. All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad too, Mary. I just found this guy. He better not go nowhere. LOL. King Ray Vet. I don't know who you're speaking about, whether it's me or someone else. But please, 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 please follow. Please subscribe to yours truly. Please, please, please do that. Become a paid subscriber. Become a free subscriber. Whatever you can afford. I know it's not easy in this day and age, but if you can afford to put a few dollars aside, it'd be greatly appreciated here. It really would. But your subscription, either way, is welcomed. Either way, right? Thank you for hitting the hearts. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for coming along on this Easter Sunday. Thank everybody for commenting and for contributing. Again, tomorrow, please, please, please join yours truly, and also join the Native American historian Jacqueline Keeler, who will be here with yours truly. We'll have a conversation about birthright citizenship, the Supreme Court, and of course, Native Americans. And please subscribe to Jacqueline Keeler as well. I have also posted on that as well. You can find Jacqueline Keeler here on Substack. Please subscribe to her ahead of tomorrow's conversation. And of course, I did send out a post earlier with her information on it. Jacqueline Keeler, I know someone else has posted it in here as well. Jacqueline, Jacqueline, Keeler, Keeler. I will post this in a post as well. I've already sent it in a post, but I'll do it again. Remember, please, you can find it on my timeline right now. It's the number one post that's on the timeline as of the time I'm recording this live. You can go and find her information there. Please subscribe to her as well, okay? We will see you here tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, during my lunch hour here. But wherever you are in the world, please make sure that you do come along for our conversation on Monday, April the 6th. Jacqueline Keeler and yours truly, myself here, me, Omar, here, will be talking on Substack Live about about the things I've mentioned, which is the Native Americans, the Supreme Court, and birthright citizenship. It has been a robust pleasure. An hour and three quarters. That's really quick for me. That's actually that's under budget. That's under budget. Well under budget, if you will. Because last time it was over 3 hours. The time before that it was 4 hours, so almost four. But thank you very much for smashing the hearts. Thank you, Dawn. She says stay healthy. Absolutely, absolutely. Stay healthy to everybody. Sleep does matter. Me back. Thank you. It really does matter, and we really, really must take care of our health. And I listen. I consider myself to be a very healthy person, but you don't know. Health things happen. And those chest pains proved to be nothing. But it's better to go to the emergency room and find out that it was nothing or urgent care and find out that it was nothing than just keep, wondering. And God forbid, so many people, because of this horrible system, don't have health care because it's a for-profit healthcare system and it's awful. And so many people die because of that fact. So many people do. You know, some of us don't have healthcare insurance, and I do want to also end on that, right? So I don't want to be cavalier here and say, "Oh, get checked." I really do want you to get checked out, a routine checkup. Some people are so afraid to go to the doctor. Many men are, for fear of what they might find. Some women are too, and other reasons why is because people can't afford it because of this horrible system. Please get a lot of sleep. I've written about mental health and about things you can do to take care of your mental health. I might have to regurgitate that post from August of last year, which a lot of people seem to like, which a lot of people seem to really like. I might have to repost that as well. Anyway, thank you, everybody. It is Easter Sunday. It is Passover. It is Sunday for those of you who, and I'm not particularly religious as a Christian, but look, the point is that those holidays are out there. I want you to, whatever you do, it's another day ending in Y. And here in San Francisco, it's a nice sunny day. Enjoy this weather if you're in a nice warm weather place. But whatever the weather is, I do hope you're safe and well. Stay healthy. All right. I'm going to get working on this post right now. And please restack this. Please subscribe. See you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, that's 12 p.m. Pacific, for the conversation about the Supreme Court, birthright citizenship, and Native Americans with the historian Jacqueline Keeler. Please be here, 3 p.m. sharp Eastern Time on Monday, April the 6th. Thank you, everybody. Take care and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. King Ray Vet says, I'm referring to you. Thanks, King Ray Vet. Thank you, everybody. Mary, King Ray Vet, Tanya of the 92%, all of you who have been here, so many of you. Thank you for your time. Take care and have a good rest of your weekend. Take care. Be well and vote. Have a plan to vote. Thank you.